We've got Luke Kirby joining us with Dan and Amy, another member of the Palladino Dream Team. How did you first find your way into the Palladino verse?
Um, I had an audition. My agent called me and said, "You have an audition," and it was for Lenny Bruce. And my agent said, "Oh, you could actually maybe get this role because you kind of look a bit like him." And I thought, "Oh wow, that's the nicest thing you said to me in 10 years." And so I had a flight from LA to New York, where I was able to retrieve. They sent a YouTube video of Lenny doing his bit on Steve Allen and a recording of his airplane glue bit, and I just went over it and over it and over it, and then yeah, stepped into a room with these two geniuses, and I guess they felt sorry for me. My plan worked.
Wearing a leather jacket with tassels. It was a whole weird.
And Danny, what was it about that audition that made you fall in love with Luke, other than the obvious?
We got to a point. We had actually cast all of the Maisel cast. We had found Rachel, and then it was like, oh shit, we have to find a Lenny Bruce because he's so important in the pilot. The pilot landed on Lenny Bruce. And by the way, it was originally conceived that we were not going to see Lenny Bruce necessarily past the pilot. It was not a recurring role at that time. A couple of guys came in. It was really just two guys. The first guy looked more like him and did good.
No, looked exactly like him. It was weird.
Did well, and he left, and we thought, oh, we're going to get this. We're going to get this.
Find this guy.
Let's see who this next guy is. So Luke walks in, and we were just, we were just immediately smitten. It's like it was. He really, Luke really studied. Luke knew Lenny Bruce before. Luke knew his stuff, and just clearly really studied. And just came in, and he just absolutely nailed it. I mean, it was, we could have told him in the room that his agent was right, that he's probably going to get the part, but he just absolutely nailed it.
Remember, we had the discussion about, because Lenny was going to be a one-off. And we said, if we just want to do the one-off, maybe you go with the guy who basically did a Lenny Bruce impression. He looked just like him, and he did an impression of Lenny Bruce. I said, but if we ever want Lenny Bruce to act, like to do something other than his stand-up, to be a full fleshed out person, we have to go with Luke Kirby. I mean, like that is, and it was just sort of we didn't know, but we went, well, let's go with the guy who's going to give us some options in the future possible. And he came in, and it was just so obvious. It was just the more that we worked with him, and especially when we got into that scene with him and Rachel at the end, it was sort of like the thing that we wanted him to be the first person that put in her ear, her brain, yeah, you love it. Yeah, this idea, this future of mine can work. It just became like, well, that's going to be the guardian. That's the muse. That's sort of the weird, twisted guiding light, if you will, of Midge Maisel's career. And that is the genius of Luke Kirby. And he's a delightful man to be around.
I'm just a vessel.
Luke, when you sign on for a Dan and Amy show, you end up becoming a part of this troupe that they take with them from show to show. Did you realize that you were going to be making a lifelong commitment?
No, I had no clue. I knew, all I knew was that that I was in all likelihood, I think that I'd be told to speak faster. And so I arrived on set very, very ready for that note. And it came very quickly. And, but I also,
not surprisingly.
But I didn't know that when I arrived on set, I'd also be sort of like immersed into this world designed by, all of these different departments that come together and make the kind of the transition into the make-believe just seamless. And I just I couldn't believe how fun and transported I felt on that first day on set. I just was like looking around the street. I was looking at, I was looking at the props. I was looking at the matchbooks. Everything was there to kind of make us feel enmeshed in this, this make believe. And it to me, I thought, oh, these people really like to raise the bar, and everybody in every department is trying to kind of, land on the same island together. And that was really made an impression, and it made me say a little prayer that, I would be invited back in some capacity. So, it took no groveling.
Yeah.
I had to pay a certain piper in the ether.
Now he's just trying to figure out how to get away from us. And
Yes,
Good luck
West
with that.
Hollywood's not far
Yeah.
enough.
He's going to be calling that agent and saying, wait, was it a Lifetime
yeah,
thing?
is that what really
Is
my
there
son-
fine print that I did not read? Lifetime.
Well, it all felt it kind of just felt seamless. Like it just felt, I don't know, it felt, I don't know, just working in that space and environment was really enjoyable. But it also just kind of, there was just a sort of like, I don't know, early on in my education, I was sort of given the mantra of just do it, and show up, and just get, I found myself in a track with Amy and Dan that made sense. And so, to be invited now into this new adventure, is it's great, I say.
Why am I here?
You know why.
You don't need me here. You don't want me here. I was very happy where I was.
You're never happy anyway.
My life. I decide.
See, this is why I thought we should have a phone call to
I
discuss.
don't need a phone call. I'm standing right here. I want to know why you insisted that I come here, to this place, with the blinding light everywhere. Why is there so much light? You think these are such wonderful people to look at? You think their dancing needs to be highlighted by so much wattage? Do you make anyone take class here?
Julian, does anybody need me to be somewhere? No.
I don't like being a chess piece.
Anybody at all?
I'm not chattel.
You're good. Schedule's clear.
Could you double check?
Okay.
No one needs you. There are no rich ladies who make you see their panties for a donation.
So Dan and Amy, how did Étoile come about? Did you always have Luke in mind for the role?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And see, we just wanted we wanted to put him front and center because he's so great and he can do so much. And Lenny was such a great character, but Lenny comes with his own, confinement because it's a real person, and there was a real end to Lenny, and there was a real sad track that he went down, and there was we couldn't take so many liberties with him and expand him out into everything that Luke can do. We had to sort of stay in the Lenny wheelhouse. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we put him number one on that call sheet, that put him front and center, and tried to write something for him that let him paint with all of the colors in his very strange tasseled toolbox. So we're just big Kirby fans, and he's got that, he's got all the stuff that we look for. He's a great actor. He's got that training and that grounding, but he's got a very specific quirk, and he can be funny, and he's not afraid of being a dick, and he's not afraid of fucking up, or it's just, and he's not, and yet he's just somebody that and there's some actors that have this, and there's some actors that don't, some actors, you just innately love them, even if they're doing something completely stupid on screen. And that's a gift, that's a gift. And to get a leading man handed to you who can do all that, it means as writers, you can kind of write him anything, and you can let the story go anywhere you want the story to go, because you don't have to worry, A, that he can't handle it, or B, that he's not going to take it one or two steps beyond even where you thought it was going to go. And that's like the greatest kind of gift for a writer.
Luke, what was your response when you got the pitch, when you heard this idea?
Does this mean I have to come in the morning? I felt so sad to say goodbye when Maisel wrapped. And I really, I felt like I'd kind of gotten a good taste of the experience with them, a really enriching one, but I kind of felt like I missed out on the daily grind, especially, with Amy and Dan and with the crew, and just being more sort of involved in the conversation. And so to know that we were going to try to venture out into a new experiment together was really just very exciting. And given the themes of the show and the subject matter was, it's the dance world is something that's always been, very attractive to me and has a lot of appeal and it just felt ripe for the kind of the, picking away at the imagination. So I was just very excited, and I knew already that it was going to mean trying to, raise the bar and do something new and different and dynamic and
talk
so
fast.
yeah. So I talk fast. I feel like we're all slowing down a little bit in our age, aren't we?
Never. And dance lessons? What about dance lessons?
I took a little, Jack's not a dancer, but I'm sure Jack, made efforts to see if he had any talent. Jack certainly is not known in his family as the one with any degree or modicum of talent. But I wanted to kind of know about the language of ballet specifically. And I thought, what better way than to take ballet lessons? And it kind of did help me, understand, just the kind of the language, but also how a person who lives in that world observes a dancer's body, observes, elegance, grace, the things that they're looking for in natural talents and also in a dancer's dedication and determination. So, in that way, it was very insightful. And I'm here to announce that I'm going to retire from acting because my dance teacher told me that I had a body made for ballet.
Oh,
And it's not too late.
that's entertainment.
I can't wait.
Yeah, just you wait.
And Dan and Amy, knowing Luke as well as you do, how much are you able to write to him? How much of Jack's quirks come from Luke?
I mean,
Just put him on a treadmill.
yeah, I would. And that makes it wrong.
Can I just say that I have, there's a line that says, where Crispin says to Jack, you were always crying. And he remembers me crying in my striped overalls. And my mother called me after watching the episode and she said, how did they know? I feel like they were definitely pulling from some kind of memory that like lingers in the air.
I don't know. You get to know people. Like, we don't tend to pick a lot of like specifics from people's lives. Like, we did make him a runner. That's unusual for us because Luke is a runner. But I think just sort of inherently or just sort of unconsciously, you get to know people, and you just get to you sort of build their quirks in sort of naturally. And that's what we always try to do with every actor that we work with. Just get to know them as soon as possible and kind of get to know what they can do.
We're vampires. We just sort of like leech and hover and hide behind coffin lids. And
yes, and my neck is always at the ready.
Always at the ready. You spend a lot of time with people and you get to know them. But again, I will say, when you have someone like Luke, he can do anything we give him. You don't really have to have the conversation about, I don't know, is this in his wheelhouse or is this something that's sort of like organic to him? You can just write anything and he can do it.
And Luke, what have you learned working with Dan and Amy besides talking fast?
Well, it sort of asserts some things that I, sort of thought I was discovering early on in this kind of, doing this work for a living. And I had a teacher a long, long time ago who, when I was studying Shakespeare, but he said that, when it comes to Shakespeare's, that, you don't do the text does you. And, it was very simple advice, but it landed in that regard, but it's carried on and it has carried on into working with Amy and Dan. When writing is as good as theirs is, it's a really good idea, I think, to get out of your own way and sort of just having a kind of faith in the words can really bring you into new worlds that you don't expect. I think that Amy and Dan have, that their writing is very, very nuanced. I think it's to be deeply felt. I don't think that just speaking fast is going to be the answer. I do think that there's a velocity in it, but I think that velocity is born out of these characters having a real need that if they're irascible, if they're obnoxious, if they're, if they're being a dick, it's because they have a real need. And, if you just trust the words, a lot of that can kind of, you can just sort of discover it happening in the moment, and it can feel very alive, which is, the biggest thing that you hope for in play. So yeah, so that's kind of been, it's just sort of asserted a kind of an old idea, and really felt rewarding to to have it come to fruition in this capacity.
So basically, he's saying we're as good as Shakespeare. That's all I said.
I
all
didn't
it
say
is.
that. I didn't say that, but I'll say it.
Now I have to Google Shakespeare. See who this guy is.
That was what I was concerned about.
All right. So last and most important question. I've read in a few interviews that Luke wants a cape. Can we get a commitment from you, Amy, and Dan, that he can get a cape in his next role?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Whatever
Wow,
you
look
want.
at that. It's just that easy. I was
Well,
so
Luke,
jealous
I'm
of
here for
Tony's
you.
cape. Thank you very much.
Wait,
I thought,
Wait till
I
you
need
get
a cape. Not a short cape, by the way. It's got to have some length to it.
oh no, full cape. No, we
Yeah,
get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, we know
good.
what you're talking about.
All right. Thank you all
Oh,
so
that's
much.
exciting.
Congrats.
What a great start to the day. Finally, some good news.
Mazel tov, you get a cape. All right. Thank you, everyone, and congrats on Étoile.